Hi, it's Joy and today I'm going to be watching Squid Game. It's Season 1, Episode 8, Frontman, which means hopefully we're going to learn more about the frontman and who he really is. Is he the brother? And yeah, there is one game left. There are 3 players left. I am stressed. A reminder that you can find all of the unedited versions of Squid Game on my Patreon right now, and also all of the edited versions are up on my Patreon right now if you're watching this on YouTube. So yes, without further ado, let's go. The worst thing is that wasn't even the most brutal culling, but it feels like it. And the glass seems like it injured his arm. I noticed that in editing that he was really holding that arm. That's so unfair if that could be used against him. She's potentially injured as well. Yeah, that's not fair. That's hampering them for the future games. I thought this was all about equality and fairness. He should have had it off the whole time it was in the water. I don't see this ending well for him. Holy shit. Have they always had all of the different games up on the walls? Oh lord, is she seriously injured? You pushed a man to his death. Any fondness or bonds? Look, you both kind of have some points in various places here, but Jihan is right. You pushed a man to his death and you don't even seem to feel a little bad about it. You know, it's one thing if you kind of phrase it in more of a there was no other choice, but he's already figured out it's going to go down to 1. I'm worried about Saibyok. Of course, sweetheart. Yep. You're no better than him. You've both made mistakes. He's got a lot of self-hatred, I think, Sangwoo. Or self-blame. She's injured, she needs a doctor. That is so unfair that they hurt them. She should show the guards. Oh lord. She should show the guards, because otherwise she's just gonna die. Oh god, sweetheart. Does she not want to show weakness? You're gonna bleed out and die, my love. You need to, like, if the whole point of this is equality, that they didn't kill the left out person and they want everyone to be equal, well, stabbing one of them isn't being equal. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Like, a shot's just gonna ring out and he's gonna fall. Yep, shit. He can't escape the same way he did last time. Come to these coordinates. You need to. Oh, you should have sent them first. You should have sent them first. Has he got word out? Please say he has. She needs to see a doctor. I think I'm colourblind because I read somewhere that they're meant to be pink suits that they wear and they look so red to me. He would be the first to tuck in. I think a certain amount of his selfish I don't care is kind of self-preservation instinct, but still. It makes me like him the least out of the 3 of them. Especially as I feel like out of the 3 of them he is the least sympathetic story. Saibyok has the most sympathetic story. I'm just so scared she's going to collapse from blood loss. Oh, I told you, my darling. Fuck. Is she afraid of showing weakness? I just think given that they could warn about the stupid equality, they wouldn't want her to die in between games. Fuck. Drop the phone, maybe they can trace it somehow. Oh lord. Fuck. She clearly needs help. I still think that freaking glass breaking, I get that that was how if you were still on the bridge you die, but there should have been a wall that came up to protect anyone that had made it. Oh lord, leaving just the knife is very ominous. Oh god. Do they want them to finish each other off here? Fuck! He didn't shoot fatally though, did he?
누구야? 당신.
Because he's front man, are the others allowed to see his face?
형. 가자. 나랑 가자.
That is his brother, right? Finding out your brother's orchestrating this, running it. You thought he was a victim. But don't die, my love. You should try and live. Fuck.
형이 왜?
He could have shot you and he didn't. But that's because he's a better man than you 1,000 times over. He came all this way for you. Bless you. They've all had to make awful choices in this game. But some of them have kept more of their humanity than others. And that is human nature, again. Or is she worried that if she can't perform in the game, they'll get rid of her? Yeah. That's a good promise. Still aim to work together, but just tell each other enough names so that you can do so. Oh, she knows she's dying. Do you think you're just going to go over there and stab him? If anything, he's probably pretending to fall asleep so he can come for you. Or no, so he can come for you, so you'll come for him and then catch him off guard. Can he do it? Because, yeah, he lied about the marbles with the old man. But that's not the same as being the murderer. That's not the same. He didn't have the gun in his hand. It wasn't like he didn't have to shoot him. And with the old man, you could argue, well, he was dying anyway. It's true. She wouldn't ask that kind of person to care for her brother. And I know how desperate you are. And this place has changed you so much, but hold as much as you can of those last bits of who you are. You wanted them to save together. I didn't think she'd survive. Are they okay with one of them bleeding out in the night? He didn't promise her that he'd look after her brother. Are they just going to shoot her in the head? Or are they bringing in a coffin? Fucking hell. Did he finish her off? Or was she dead anyway? Fucking hell. He was so young. Just deserved such a life. And she didn't hear his promise. No, this Sang-woo has gone beyond too far. Like, any redeeming qualities, I was trying not to be overly harsh because I've never been in his shoes, but he chose to steal money from his business. He chose to kill her when he didn't have to. Oh, they're not going to let you do it. You have to be the final two in the games. Oh. Separating them now, because otherwise... Everything she's been through and all the fighting she's done to try and make a better life for her brother. He wanted her to live so much. So did I. I've been trying so hard to hold on to, like, Sang-woo is human as well, and there's more to everything. There's more to this. I didn't really feel he's dead either, because I was so glad it was going to happen, but I don't want to think about it too much, because then I will think about it. Good. That better fucking torture you more than literally anything you did in your fucking game. So if one of the police officers never comes back after garbling something about being on an island, can they trace where his phone last pinged? Even if that was the ferry terminal. I hate this show. I mean, it's done so well because I knew there was two characters who died in this episode. I knew they were going to die. I have a feeling Ji-hun is going to win because he's the main character. He's the guy we followed from before we even knew what a Squid Game was through to now. And like, yeah, there's a chance if someone ruthless is going to win, it'll be Sang-woo. Although I feel like maybe he's unlocked a little bit more of the ruthlessness within Ji-hun now. I knew Sae-byuk was most likely going to die because I couldn't see her winning the character as much as they've helped us get attached to her. She's not the lead character or the most ruthless character. And she's the character as a viewer you kind of want to win the most. And like by that I don't mean I was rooting for Ji-hun to lose, because I don't want him. I want him to live and get to be with his daughter and get to be with his mother and have a life. But at the same time, Sae-byuk just deserved so much to be able to just be with her brother. And in so many ways this show shows you how failed society is, because there are people in the real world who would be as desperate for money to put themselves through what they're doing here. They are so desperate that they cannot consent to go through this. There is a level of poverty that unless you've experienced it you could not possibly imagine. There's a level of desperation for money. And you know, I mean, I am in no way in their position whatsoever, but I know what it's like to just think, if I could just get one big lump sum of money, I could just have my life put in order. You have people like Sang-woo, who he is purely in this position because he embezzled money, from my understanding, from the company he worked at. That is entirely his own fault. Now, I don't know, obviously, all the reasons behind it. Maybe he was in some kind of getting in trouble himself, or maybe it was just he had a lifestyle he had to maintain, and it was greed. Then you have so he's the sort of person that I feel the least sympathy for, but I still do kind of think he's in a position where he's so desperate he can't honestly consent to this. Then you have the Ji-huns of the world who have made some shitty decisions in their life. They have let down people that love them. But in a society, we need to be more understanding of people don't get gambling addictions or drug addictions or whatever because they think, woo, it's fun. Yes, that probably is why they initially do it, but addiction is an illness. Often addicts, something awful and traumatic has happened to them. I feel like with Ji-hun, he saw, you know, his co-worker die in front of him. He was not able to find a job again after he took part in that strike, which is beyond unethical, but that is a story for another thing. Capitalism sucks, which is the moral of this show, in my opinion. He is someone who he saw a co-worker die right in front of him. And I feel like if anything, that would have reinforced the randomness of life and maybe made gambling more appealing. Like, you know, oh, it's 50, like who cares, it's all up in the air, let's do it. Things can change in an instant. Why can't I change my fortunes by gambling? And yeah, it's not a good thing, but he needed help from a society. Needs to help people who end up in that position, not punish them. You know, if you go into debt because of gambling, I feel like there should be some kind of place you can go to where your debts are forgiven and you go through an intense therapy course to try and help you. You know, even if it's like a check-in psych hospital thing. There should be so many things designed to help vulnerable people in our society, but instead we either actively exploit them or neglect them and then blame them for it. Or find the worst example of someone who, for some reason, you think is responsible. But then, so that's kind of the middle ground person who, again, could not legally or realistically consent to being here because he didn't feel like he had another choice in his life. He basically had a gun to his head in terms of his life. And who, as much as you can kind of think, oh, if only you'd got help, if only you'd done this, if only you'd listened. But at the end of the day, you also can see how he just needed help. Then you have the Sae-byuks of the world, who the world did not give her one damn thing. It just took and it took and it took. From growing up in North Korea and having family members die to a plague, to desperately trying to escape with her family, her father being shot and her body floating away in a river, her mother being captured in China and sent back, and no doubt, you know, how traumatic that would have been. Just then, it's her and her little brother, and she is now the one that has to be responsible for this child and herself, and she wants her mother back. You know, I don't know what kind of a childhood you get in North Korea, but no matter what, any trace of that she lost instantly. And then it seems like, I don't know how old she was, whether she was like 16 and that was considered too old, or I presume she was like 18-ish. She's still a kid. Still in no way should be in the position she's in. It seems almost like because he was like South Korea took them in, and they were like, oh, he's a child, you can't support him, we'll give him a home, just figure it out. Anyone who comes in as a refugee, as a defector, or whatever you want to call it, and at the end of the day she's a refugee, she should have been given so much help and guidance, especially as a young woman starting a life in a new country with a little brother that all they have left of their family is each other after everything they've been through. There is no universe in which she should have ended up in the position she did to feel like this is the only viable option to save her family and to finally ease that pressure on her. It is so wrong that they could even, because I feel like if this was completely ridiculous. If anybody, like refugees, were treated so well in South Korea, I mean, and again, they're not treated particularly well anywhere in the world, are they? Let's face it. But if, North Korean refugees were given, a sort of a home, really helped find a job or get an education or whatever it is they need to start them up in life, and it would be really unrealistic for one of them to end up sort of on the streets trying to survive, then, they wouldn't have been able to make the character like that because people would have been, like, ridiculing it. It's just so wrong. And, you almost, she's not done anything wrong to end up in this position. Yes, she has made bad choices. Yes, she has done things that weren't great. But life didn't give her any other options that she could find. And it should have done. The final three really did pose the kind of three ends of the spectrum of people who end up desperate and in desperate need of assistance financially to help them in every single other aspect of their life. It's one of those things that I can't stand, is the saying, money doesn't buy happiness. Because, I'm sorry, if you give somebody a problem, whether it's cancer, whether it's a house fire, whether it's chronic fatigue syndrome, and then you give one person $60 million, pounds, I'm in English, why did I say dollars? You give another person 60 million, so it makes 60 million pounds a year. You give another person, I don't know what an average salary is, $50,000 a year, quite a nice salary. You give someone else 25,000, they can probably get for, and you give someone else 10,000 pounds a year. Which one of those people is going to be the happiest? If every aspect of their life is the same apart from the amount of money they have, the richer. The happiness scale will go down. It is common sense. Rich people, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. I have problems. Yeah, of course you have problems. But you have money. And do you know what else? If you're having a problem, you could just jet off on a holiday. You could do so many other things. I hate that saying. I hate the idea that, oh, well, if they're really that poor, why do they have an iPhone? Because they're a human who's alive and is allowed to have things that are fun. Anyway, that is a whole other point that I'm getting into. Capitalism as we have it does not work. And it just makes me so mad. And to think as well that Squid Game has been going on for all of these years, and as I keep saying, the worst thing is how much I could see it happening in the real world. I would not be surprised if next year, God, given the way the world is fucking going, if it was revealed it has been happening since then, and this was actually a document. I mean, it wasn't a documentary, but it's based on real events or something horrific. Or even worse, I could see it giving some rich bastards an idea. I mean, when you think about some of the things people like Boris Johnson have said about poor people, I cannot remember them off the top of my head, but he has said a lot of disgraceful things about the working class. He burnt money in front of, was it him or was that David Cameron or was it Johnson? I think it was one of them. Burnt money in front of a homeless man, like when he was at uni as part of a hazing. This is the kind of attitude that those who are born into wealth and have always had wealth have for those who are poor. And it is despicable and disgraceful, and this show really does highlight that in a lot of ways, which is why I think having people be like, oh, we're making a Squid game, it's kind of like you're missing the point a little bit there. I think the creator is kind of for it, because he's like, yeah, exposure. But yeah, it's an iffy one. So Sang-woo is someone who 100%, any morals he had at the start, he has lost. But I've been trying so hard because I didn't want to just pile on him, because I do think every single player that stepped foot in this place is a victim of everything that's happening here. They were a victim in some way or another by society, and even if it's like the gangster guy who has made a lot of shitty choices all by himself since he was an adult, I imagine there weren't many options given to him when he was younger, otherwise he wouldn't have ended up where he did. Sang-woo, I do want to say I support him. I feel like he gave, in the first game, he did give Ji-hun advice. He was like, stay behind someone else. That like he tried to help him. And then in the second game, he threw him to the wolves. He figured out what the game most likely was, and he did not say anything. I think the reality of once he had time to sit with the reality of the first game, because he's so intelligent, and definitely he's intelligent, like, socially, he was able to reason out, potentially even then, that there would be one winner. And so, I don't care if that's a childhood friend, I need to survive this. And he got teams when he has been the most ruthless out of our main sort of good characters throughout. And we've seen that grow and grow. And even if he was kind of saying, look, I didn't want to push the guy off the bridge, but he would have held us up. You'd be dead now, I'd be dead now. It's kind of going to come down to one of us at the end. What else was I supposed to do? I want to live. And showed a little more emotion. But I would be more like, oh, poor guy. But he didn't. And he tried to act like Jihan was wrong for claiming that he wouldn't have. And maybe, you know, none of us can say what would you do if it came down to him or me. No one knows what they would do in that position until they are there. The problem is Jihan did push him before they were quite there. I mean, I know that they did only make it with seconds to spare, so maybe he was right, but he did it. He didn't do it and then was not anguished about it. I genuinely think Squid Game needs to be shut down by its own rules, because it was supposed to be fair. The whole concept was it was fair. We don't pick on the weakest link, so they can, you know, we look after them, we don't leave them behind. So they didn't just shoot her in the head when no one picked her as a partner. They executed the people for cheating by telling the game sooner. But yeah, we'll let someone get stabbed with a piece of glass. Was that their hope, that one of them would get injured enough to make the last night interesting? Or in the next episode, are we going to see people being, like, the VIPs being furious that was allowed to happen, even if they didn't necessarily think she was going to win, because they seem to always be voting on men? Would they have been furious that now it's going to be down to 2, or did they want the final game to be down to 2? Is it going to screw the final game up because it's down to 2? I think that was ridiculous. I get the concept of the glass. It looked very dramatic for the VIPs and the viewers, but there would have been time to usher them away quickly, or to, you know, put up a block so that did a shield of some kind. I know that force fields aren't real, but cover it up somehow so that didn't happen to them. If they had got to the final game, she was bleeding out anyway. So then, you know, the feast is, again, it's just sickening, given what you've put them through and what you're planning to put them through, which I do not know, but I can't imagine it's anything good. And then that night, and see, the reason I will always love a character if at their core they have a compassionate heart, and they can make crappy choices, they can do the wrong thing, they can make bad decisions, but it's when they then regret them, and any bad decision Jihan has had to make, he feels shit about it. The fact that he went over to her and he just wanted to sit with her to check she was okay. They are literally in the Squid Game, and the fact that, you know, he was desperately hoping there could be some way 2 of them could live. Maybe they could both say, well, you need a winner, right? Let's eat the berries on 10. He was so desperate that, you know, I can do what I want, you can do what you want, we can be happy. And he heard her story. And it breaks my heart that she never heard him promise. I think if he wins, he will find her brother and look after him, I hope. Maybe he will have so thoroughly lost himself in his rage and whatever happens in the final game that he won't, but I can only pray and hope that he will do the right thing for her brother. Make sure he's looked after, knows he has someone to look up to, someone to depend on, and that his sister loved him. But I genuinely don't know, obviously, how the final game works. But it kills me that, because obviously he was still in that somewhat naive, maybe, but I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with being naive, desperate hope that they could both survive. And I think that was something that was helping him hold on to his last bit of sanity, was she's a good person, because, you know, she's helped me a few times, she helped me on the last game when she didn't need to, he pushed someone when he didn't need to, so she's good. Knowing her whole story, or as much of it as he does know, finding out about her brother, he would so think, oh, if I can get out with her, if I can keep her alive, that's a good thing. I think that would be something that was really helping him keep a hold of his sanity and his morality. And she was dying anyway. Most likely she wouldn't have been a threat in the final game, but Sungwoo still cut her throat. Like, I wish they'd been too slow and he'd stabbed him, I can't lie. I am beyond furious. Any redeeming quality I thought Sungwoo might have, I don't fucking care. you know, there is an argument to be had for, in these games, it's him or me. And even when he killed, got Ali killed, I was like, well, maybe you don't know, maybe they would shoot you both if you haven't done the game by the time, when the time is up. Maybe they would just kill you both. So that could be argued as saving his skin. This was murder. Just the same as every single person that went around murdering on that night when it was the bloodbath. This wasn't in the game when it was you or me. Yes, in a way, you could argue, oh, he was just doing it now to save the trouble later. But it was barbaric, it was wrong. Oh. And then Ji-Hunt's gonna feel terrible because if he hadn't walked away from her, maybe it wouldn't have happened. Just kills me. Then we have Jun-Ho, and I have guessed it was his brother from the moment we realised his brother was not, most likely not a dead prison. Was basically, when we figured out his brother almost definitely wasn't a player, I was like, oh, he's like, ugh. And, you know, how does that affect you more? Because it's one thing when you think, my brother is a victim of this, I want to save him. He risked every single thing. He gave his life to try and save his brother, and at the end of the day, his brother took his life. And if I think about that too much, I will start crying again. Like, when it happened, I didn't cry, but I think that's because I was so, like, all show, I've been like, he's going to die, his brother's going to kill him, and I had some hope he wouldn't, but yeah, it didn't really hit me until I saw his face in the mirror again, just everything. Like, I kind of blocked out how awful and tragic it was, that he was genuinely such a good man who was trying to do the right thing, trying to save his brother. Now his mother has lost her son, and she doesn't know it, but she's lost the other son because he's a monster now. And it seems, I mean, I could kind of see that whoever his brother once was, having been through Squid Game, changed him. And that's what scares me about Ji-Hun, that he might also end up changed. Because as much as right now he's clinging on to those compassions, right now that compassion is gone, and he could, who knows what they're going to make him do in the final game, but if it could kind of unhinge him to an extent, you know, like that lid that he's been keeping down could burst. Because I'm just stressed. Because you kind of think, like, if his brother was so good, then his brother, the front man, must have had some shreds of decency to begin with. And he obviously, when he comes home, he puts on a good act. Terrifying. I can't imagine what he's been through and how it must change him. I think that kind of trauma, the more you sit with it in a way, in some ways, the worse it can get. Now that isn't the case necessarily, but I mean, like, when you're going through it, it's horrific and it's awful, but you're fighting to keep alive, and you can kind of, the adrenaline of everything you're going through kind of keeps you going. Whereas when that stops, when you're just sat there with all that money in your bank account, all your worries are gone, but all those people are dead, and some of them at your hand technically, that will change you kind of as time goes on. How did he become the front man? Is that a thing where, like, is the winner of this game going to end up being a front man eventually? I don't know. It's just so sadistic in so many ways how it changes you, and I feel like why it works, why it has not been uncovered thus far, is because, well, I guess the people, I imagine they kill the people that don't come back. I can't see them just letting them go, because any one of them could turn them in, or do they watch them in case they do, or I don't know. That the winner is in some ways complicit, because they needed that money so desperately to live. They will use that money to pay off their debtors, or to pay for their medical treatment, or whatever it is they needed the money for, they will use it. And then they are complicit in a way, or they will feel complicit because they took part in it and they didn't say no, they didn't say let's leave. And so they keep the cycle going on and on and on. My heart breaks for him, for what he must have felt on that cliff. I think ever since finding out his brother was a winner, the thought must have crossed his mind that his brother could be the front man. It's probably part of why he asked, who are you? It would have crossed his mind that he could have been a guard or a VIP or whoever. But his just desperate hope that that wasn't the case. And then seeing him there, this man that he risked everything to try and save. He could have shot straight in the heart because he didn't shoot fatally. He aimed for the shoulder. And then knowing he was going to kill him just absolutely crushes me. Maybe had he said, yes, I'll come back with you, maybe his brother was always, I feel like he probably always was going to kill him. But there's that tiny shred of hope that maybe he could talk him round somehow in his mind, and then he could escape. It's sort of one of those situations where I feel like the longer you're alive, the more chance you have. But it's the kind of end I feared for his character, but it's the end I kind of expected as well. And it's just awful and brutal. We just have to hope that his chief heard enough of what he said to know something was up, no matter what. Getting a frantic phone call from a missing detective, where you hear bits of it, but he sounds stressed, says something about being on an island, and then he never comes back. Surely you have to investigate that, even if you don't do anything else. I have no idea what the South Korean police are like, but surely you have to investigate that. So this episode was brutal, as always. I am scared for the finale. I'm scared about how it might change Jihan, and I'm scared that Jihan might die. I'm scared in general. This show is fantastic. A reminder that all of the episodes are from my Patreon, unedited and edited, and thank you so much for watching.